Welcome to another Loranda instructional video. My name is John Moss. Today we're going to address the often asked question, what makes one farm worth more or less than another? We're not going to look at this issue from the macroeconomic level, which would take into account future grain prices, exports, or interest rates. Instead, we're going to approach it from the micro or individual farm perspective. Knowing that, the response from many in the real estate industry regarding value would simply be location, location, location. While location is important, there are many more variables to consider than just that. In the next few minutes, we are going to discuss these variables, some of which you as a landowner have no control over, and some of which you do, so you know what factors to take into consideration the next time you're thinking about buying, selling, or just updating the value of your farm. As mentioned earlier, there are certain characteristics of a farm that you really can't change, or it doesn't make economic sense to do so. First on the list would be soil types. Most soils were formed thousands of years ago and are comprised of a series of particles, each containing sand, silt, and clay. It's the ratio of these three components that's important. Too much sand in a property has to be irrigated in order to maximize the yield potential. Too much clay and it has to have a complete tile system in order to remove the excess water. Regardless of the makeup of the soils on your farm, it's nearly impossible to change their composition. In the Midwest, all the soils have been identified by the Soil Conservation Service, and tables have been created to show what a soil might best be used for and to reflect how productive it can be relative to other soils in the state. If you aren't sure what's on your farm, you can find this information online simply by typing in the keywords soil type and the name of your county and state. Weather patterns can also impact the value of farmland. Though it seems like over time that the same amount of rain should fall on all farms across the Midwest, it just doesn't happen that way. In fact, variations in weather patterns can occur within the same county. The acres that receive consistent timely rains during the growing season will normally produce more bushels and be worth more than the acres that receive heavy storms in the spring, thus delaying planting, and fewer storms in the summer, thus stressing the crops. While it is possible to change the amount of water a crop receives through irrigation, it may not be economically feasible depending upon the soil types and the size and the location of the aquifer. Third on the list is the presence of minerals, including oil, gas, coal, and gravel. Again, these deposits were formed thousands of years ago, and either your property has them or it doesn't. And even if your farm does have them, are they of the quality and the quantity that will make extracting them feasible? If so, then minerals can definitely add value to your property. Next is topography, or how rolling or sloping a tract is. This is important as the amount of slope can affect how much erosion or soil loss is occurring, which can negatively affect the yields. If there is too much slope, then the farm may need a conservation plan in order to minimize the soil loss. This plan may require that the farm be no-tilled or that waterways and terraces be installed. These structures can be costly to maintain and difficult to farm around. This isn't to say that they aren't important, they are, but if your farm requires expensive conservation projects and the neighboring farms don't, then this will have an impact on value. Please note that in certain parts of the country, farmers will try and alter the topography via laser leveling in order to improve the efficiency of the irrigation system. In the Midwest, however, trying to level a hill just isn't a reasonable alternative. Access to a property, both legal and practical, can also affect value. Landowners have a legal right to access their farm, and normally this is either via road frontage or via an easement. Many owners don't care how they get to a farm as long as they can do it. However, studies have shown that there will be a difference in value between 160 acres that sells with a 1/2 mile of road frontage and a similar 160 acres that sells with the only legal access being a 15-foot easement that runs for a 1/4 mile strip off the road. Also keep in mind that not all legal access is the same. A tract with a 1/2 mile of road frontage and only a shallow road ditch between the road and the tillable acreage is often more valuable than a parcel with 1/2 mile of road frontage that has a major drainage ditch between the road and the fields. In the second scenario, a culvert or bridge needs to be installed and maintained in order to access the farm. This can be quite expensive, especially when factoring in how large the culvert bridge needs to be in order to support the size of modern farm machinery. This is an example of how good legal access and good practical access may be different. The government can also impact the value of a property through farm program bases and yields, taxation, zoning, and other restrictive uses. Use restrictions, often around major cities or protected habitat areas, can be quite cumbersome and can detract from what someone might be willing to pay for a parcel. The final property characteristic that a landowner has little control over is its location. Unfortunately, you just can't move a farm to a different area. Location can have a positive impact on value if the tract is located close to development, better grain markets, or is strategically situated between two very wealthy landowners, or a negative impact if it is located next to the county landfill or a contaminated EPA site. In no way do I want to minimize the importance of location, but remember the other variables mentioned above, since two adjoining farms in the same location may have very different values because of soil types, drainage, or access. Now let's look at some characteristics that you as a landowner can control or change that can influence the value of your farm. First, and probably most important, is drainage. A well-drained farm is always in high demand by both farm tenants and farm purchasers. A poorly drained farm, on the other hand, is often discounted in the market due to the negative impact on crop yields. Though drainage is important, sometimes the cost may seem overwhelming. Installing tile on your farm can be relatively inexpensive. However, getting your tile connected to an outlet that can take the water away can be the costly challenge. If a large tile main or drainage ditch is close by, then the expense may be minimal. However, if it is several miles away, then the cost can add up. That's why many landowners develop a 3 to 5 year drainage plan, as it helps spread out the costs. You need to remember that drainage is probably the best long-term investment that you can make on your property that can produce immediate results through higher yields. Along with drainage, conservation projects that help slow erosion are good long-term investments. These might include installing terraces, filter strips, waterways, or even contour farming. As mentioned earlier, these improvements can make a parcel a little harder to farm, but any topsoil that has been washed away can never be recovered. Fortunately, in some cases, the government will provide cost-sharing funds to install these improvements, which makes the overall expense much more reasonable. Making sure that the fertility is at optimum levels is a third way to improve your property's value. Fortunately, most farms today have had the recommended amounts of potassium, phosphorus, and lime applied so that crop yields can be maximized. Having a comprehensive soil test completed will confirm the levels of the various nutrients so you know how much of what needs to be applied. Similar to drainage, both farmland renters and buyers will discount what they're willing to pay for a property if they find that the nutrients have been mined over the years and tons of fertilizer or lime need to be applied. The final characteristic over which a landlord has control is the tenant. Most farmers today are quite progressive and instinctively know when to plant, what hybrids to select, what herbicides to apply, and when the best time to market grain might be. Unfortunately, there are still some farmers that don't have a grasp of these issues, and their mismanagement can cost a landowner tens of thousands of dollars every year. The thought of having to terminate a long-term tenant is not a pleasant one, but you need to focus on how much money that you're losing annually. Over the years, we've had several landowners approach us about selling their farms because they didn't have enough money to live on. After analyzing their situation, we quickly came to the conclusion that they didn't need to sell, but instead they needed a new tenant who had the ability to maximize the net income from the farm. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and have learned more about the factors that can give a farm value. Think about these characteristics the next time you hear about a farm that is sold for an unexpectedly high or low amount. as they may help explain the price. And consider how these variables may impact the value of a farm that you may want to purchase in the future. Thanks for watching today, and I hope that you can join us again in the near future for another Loranda instructional video.